Welcome to the Law Be With You podcast show. Just reading a lot of stuff on internet world, the internet universe about Superman, and we've done a recent episode on Superman on the Law Be With You podcast show and on Christian Fandom Geek on YouTube, and we talked about Black Superman versus Clark Kent and the idea of race bending Superman and some of the plans that Warner Brothers have and to do with Superman. J.J. Abrams, of course, very famous director who directed some of the most recent Star Wars films, is involved in that project as well. And if you haven't checked out that episode, get onto either for your podcast player on the Law Be With You podcast show, or even have a look on our YouTube channel, Christian Fandom Geek. It's a really interesting episode. It's got a few views as well, and just kind of, it's interesting to think about these sort of political ideas that are coming in, and obviously thinking about comic books, because comic books have always had identity politics within them as well. So it's really interesting to think about that. Now, there is this idea of Superman, because obviously we all have different opinions on Superman. I grew up as a Superman fan, not really more for the comics, but through the Richard Donner movies. So the idea of Superman as the idea of hope, and Christopher Reeve as an awesome Superman, iconic role for an iconic actor. And so in the 80s, really growing up, it was like, you were a Superman fan, and it's either Superman or Star Wars, or both. And I was a fan of Superman and Star Wars, and loved Superman, loved the Superman films. I thought the special effects were good. Obviously, you look back at the special effects now and you think, as a kid, it was like, oh man, Superman's flying. Oh, how awesome are these special effects? And and obviously, like, in that way, they don't always age that well as films. But in terms of the ideals of the film, the direction of the film, the heart of the movie, these Superman films of the 80s were amazing. And so, thinking of Superman and being a Superman fan because of these movies, they obviously had the most recent run of Superman. I say Supermen, but it's obviously Superman films, which were obviously from the DCEU, and essentially they're jumping off the back of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So you had obviously a Man of Steel film. Obviously had the sort of the other films that come from that Batman versus Superman and Justice League and etc. etc. But really now thinking about the first film, obviously Zack Snyder, who was the director of this film, and the Man of Steel movie. Now, in a recent story on Variety on their website, I don't know if it's a virtual publication, so they're talking about Zack Snyder, and they're talking about his movies. And this is trending on Twitter at the moment, because a lot of comic book fans, a lot of Superman fans, are not happy with what Variety have said. Now, the gentleman that's wrote this story is William Earl. Now, I don't know who William Earl is, so I'm guessing he's a correspondent that talks about media and films. But I've read some of this. It goes into a lot of the films actually, but I'm just reading. I'm primarily focusing on what he's saying about Man of Steel. Obviously, Man of Steel was released in 2013, and I'm going to read a little bit of what he said here. He talks about the Henry Cavill as this alien with great visuals, but seems to lack any heart associating with the iconic character. This Superman is dark and brooding, ready to kill and commit massive property damage at the moment's notice, while facing off against Michael Shannon's scenery chewing General Zod. From crashing buildings to billowing wheat stalks, everything is shot lovingly in a movie meant to look epic from every angle, but with thin characterization and plodding pace. There isn't much for fans to hold on to, and very little for casual audiences who want to watch the Man of Steel to save the day. Now, this is interesting because a lot of fans are not happy about what has been written in this Variety story. They're not happy with William Earl characterizing the Man of Steel film as lacking heart. Now, this is interesting. I have a lot of thoughts about the Man of Steel film. I enjoyed the film. Don't get me wrong. And initially, when I saw this trending on Twitter, I was probably thinking, oh, you know what? I'm going to be really angry about what this guy has written. He's bashing Superman. I'm a Superman fan. What is he saying? But actually, when you're going to read what he said, it's kind of speaking the truth to a degree. And I know that this may be controversial, and some fans of the show might not agree with me. But when I think back to the Richard Donner era of Superman, those films were filled with heart and hope, and Zack Snyder's Man of Steel film doesn't quite hit that note. The biggest thing for me, which I probably struggle with the film, is the pacing of the film. The first half of the film feels very slow, and I think Zack Snyder's trying to ground Superman make him almost very ordinary, as a kind of farm boy. Echoes of like Luke Skywalker there. This sort of farm boy in Smallville, and this idea, but it's also the idea of the kind of you get the idea of the trawler, the boat, and the fishing, and all these, and he ends up being a fisherman at one point, and you get the idea of Clark Kent very grounded, very almost human, very ordinary, trying to fit in with humanity, and not really exposing who he is, his greatness, and in that regard. Now, from that, you get this slow build up of Clark Kent's struggles and going from job to job, not really being settled in life, struggling to find his place in life and reality, struggling to find his place on Earth. And then, obviously, things get expedited through Michael Shannon's General Zod, an iconic villain, to an antagonist to Superman as the protagonist. And that then expedites the film, and the pace of the film picks up to, some very epic action sequences in the movie. The difficulty with the film is that it goes from very, very slow build up and the editing doesn't really help with that, to then this kind of build this quick pace film with a lot of carnage, a lot of collateral damage. Buildings are destroyed left, right, and center. And if you think about it, they don't really show it that much in the film, but there's people in those buildings. So when these buildings, when he's fighting against General Zod and Zod's acolytes, and they're completely destroying, I can't remember if it was New York or wherever it is. I think it's New York. Whenever this is going on, people are in those buildings, and so you kind of think, hang on a minute, what's going on here? If you're comparing this to sort of the Richard Donner movies where Superman was very careful and he's trying to save everybody. It's this, the archetype of a sort of archetypal fireman who's trying to rescue everybody, even like, animals stuck in trees is flying up to go and get them. And then in this, Zack Snyder version, the Man of Steel, the collateral damage is on another level. And obviously, I think there was a fan backlash about this. Like fans were like saying, "Hang on a minute, why is Superman's destroying buildings? There's people in those buildings. There's men and women and probably kids in those buildings. Like, what's going on? Superman's not supposed to be doing that." And we know that Superman's trying to save lives, and there's a kind of the old sort of idea of sort of this utilitarianism coming into play, where there's a greater good, because obviously if General Zod wins, there'll be even more carnage. There'll be even more buildings destroyed and whatnot. And this sort of, so Superman's essentially he's doing good, but the way he's going about it is not great. And so I think some of these themes have been picked up on, obviously, in what has been written in this story here on Variety, and you have to kind of agree with that. Like it's very far from the Richard Donner movies, and there are scenes that show you a lot of heart in the film, but actually, I think for me, it's not that the films don't have that Man of Steel doesn't have heart. I think it does have heart. I think Zack Schneider, it really tries to show that. I think for me, the issues are things like the collateral damage to buildings, where people are in those buildings, where folks are in those buildings. The idea of Superman is morality. It's not the sort of, how would we even put this? The sort of very American dream Superman where he's like, you know, wanting to save everybody and, not trying to destroy and really trying to avoid causing this sort of collateral damage. And so, yeah, there is these things. Now, as I say, as a Superman fan, I really wanted to disagree with what was being written in this story, but actually, I think there's some fair criticism to Zack Schneider here. I don't agree that the film doesn't have heart. I think the film does have heart, and I think you see with his relationship with Lois Lane and his relationship with Martha as well. You do see that there is a lot of heart there, and I think in that regard, that's the one thing that I would say. I think is it hasn't got quite right. But in terms of the actual, the pacing of the film and some of the things I've already just mentioned, yeah, there's probably some fair criticism there. So, what did you think of Man of Steel? Are you a Superman fan? Are you a comic book fan? Are you a Zack Schneider fan? What did you think of that? Because obviously, in Batman versus Superman, they picked up on what the fans said, and so they used that as a big part of the plot of Batman versus Superman, which I thought was quite clever. They picked up on the fact that that Bruce Wayne really had issues with Superman because of seeing how Superman was destroying the city, and it was like, what is going on here? And it brought about this sort of paranoia that Batman was like, okay, this guy's an alien, and this guy could destroy, cities in the space of like 5-10 minutes. This guy could do that. He has that power. We need to stop him. And so they did listen to what the fans had said, and they did kind of play that into the narrative and the plot line of Batman versus Superman. But a lot of fans, a lot of folks within fandom were like, that's not Superman. That's not the Superman that we know. That's not the Superman we know from the comic books. That's certainly not the Superman we know from the Richard Donner movies. So what do you think? Get onto Christian Fandom Geek on YouTube. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. Are you a fan of Man of Steel? Did you like how Zack Schneider brought about that vision of Kal-El? And yeah, we'll be with you very, very soon on the Law Be With You podcast show. Just to let you know, we are now on Good Pods. So if you listen to your podcast shows through Good Pods, the Law Be With You podcast show is on there. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and most podcast players as well. So make sure that you keep listening to the Law Be With You podcast show, and know that there's loads of platforms for you to listen to the show on now as well. Also, if you're a big fan of YouTube, we are on YouTube as Christian Fandom Geek. So if you get on there, leave us a comment as well, because I really want to interact with what you think of the show. And yeah, we're really excited for some great ideas and episodes that we've got up and coming on the Law Be With You podcast show as well. So keep safe, have a great day, and we'll be with you very soon on the Law Be With You podcast show.